title is that I chair the editorial board of the Financial Times in America. I also write columns, and I've co-founded a platform called Moral Money, which looks at environmental, social, and governance issues. It's part of the FT. Aside from that, though, I was actually trained as a cultural anthropologist before I became a journalist, and I've used that in a 25-year career in journalism that's taken me through the Lex column, through the role of financial editor, through the role of running the editorial operations in America, to my current position now for the Financial Times. The question I asked was really about whether we should be putting more and more automation on the trading floor, or whether we should be hanging on to our humanity and our human processes at the same time, or instead. And the reason I ask that is because we live in an era where there's reverence, although also fear, of AI, artificial intelligence, and so many parts of our world are becoming digitized and subject to automation. And in many ways, that's fantastic because it delivers incredible efficiencies and speed that were completely unimaginable a decade ago. And yet, the issue is that we may also be losing something, which is not just our sense of human ethical values in these processes, but also the all important human interactions that occur on trading floors or anywhere else that essentially make us able to adapt to new information. Because the key thing to realize about automation is that it tends to take models and snapshots of the past and project them into the future to guide how these systems work. And if our world is changing in some unpredictable ways, looking at the past as an automatic guide to the future, or assuming that we want to replicate the past with, say, things like racist language into the future, may not always be the right thing to do. There was a range of different responses to this question, which I think reflects the fact that people are responding to these ideas in different ways. And many people are still groping for the correct balance between automation and human interaction. That's not surprising because the speed of this transition is so extraordinary that it's challenging all of our systems to find the best way to respond. And I think it's worth bearing in mind that when you look at how the financial industry has evolved in the last few decades, one great paradox is that although we had the ability to have remote trading floors, really starting in the early years of the last decade, when a lot of trading went online onto electronic platforms, most big banks and financial institutions did not abolish their trading floors, they actually expanded them. There was a kind of race to see who could get the biggest trading floor of all. I describe all this in a book that's forthcoming in about 4 months' time called Anthrovision, where I have a whole chapter on the paradox of bank trading floors. And the reason that banks and other institutions expanded these trading floors, even as they have the ability to trade remotely, really rests in that point which you see reflected in the answers, which is that a lot of people actually like having human interaction alongside automation because they know it brings a different set of tools for navigating the world. The follow-up question I would ask is actually something which came out of a survey of a group called the Internet Engineering Technical Forum. Sounds very boring, the IETF, but these are the geeks who actually built the internet and today meet regularly to discuss how to shape the core protocols without which nothing could work in the internet space. Now, these geeks operate by taking decisions not through a digital virtual vote or even a show of hands. They hum. Seriously, when they get together, they hum to indicate whether they support a proposal or not in a process known as rough consensus. Now, they've been doing that for 3 decades. And when we went into COVID last year, they faced a problem because they moved their technical work online very easily because guess what? They're all internet computing geeks. But they couldn't move the humming process because when they hum, they get together in a room. I describe in my forthcoming book how they got together in a hotel in Edgware Road a couple of years ago and hummed to make a critical decision about cybersecurity. But you can't hum online effectively. So they played around with alternatives and asked the geeks, would you like to go back to humming when the pandemic ends or just carry on doing these digital alternatives? And even the computer geeks who built the internet said, we want to keep humming in person because it has a function. So the question I have for Sibos is this: when the pandemic ends, do you want to go back to in-person interactions? Or do you want to hang on to all the new digital tools that you've actually managed to adopt during the pandemic, or a combination?